Um, let's do maybe just a quick show of hands. How many people have had some experience with computer programming? Just give us a little thumbs up. Okay, we have some people. Anyone with experience programming in JavaScript? Okay, we have some people with thumbs up. Great. So again, in the spirit of the exercise that we're going to be doing today, I'll ask the people that have experience, particularly Michael Evans from Monum, who's joining us, volunteering to help us conduct our work today. Help each other out. If someone's struggling, one of the people that feel that have a little bit more proficiency, we can kind of go to the side and help the person that's struggling. Learning, I will also disclose, I never introduced myself. I'm Santiago Garces. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the City of Boston, and I'm your host for this hour of code. I don't get to program all the time in my job. I wish that I got to do more technical work, but I love it. I'm not the best at it, but so again, that's partially why I figured it'd be a good opportunity for us to spend an hour learning. So to get started, I'm gonna share on the chat the link to the exercise. We're going to be following an exercise that has been created for us as part of this international movement about the hour of code. So I'm gonna share the link with you all so that we can go. You can use your favorite browser to go to the exercise, and then I'll share my screen in a minute. And as I mentioned, you could go a little bit faster, a little bit slower. And I am also going to share with you a file. Maybe Carrie, you can help me with that. We have the great Carrie Jordan, who's the chief of staff. I see some other DoIT members like the amazing Elizabeth Rios here as well, and Ray Mejia. But maybe, Carrie, can you help me share the file with the map of the city?
Oh, Santi, I've got it if you don't mind. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, super. Okay, perfect. All right, let's go forth. I am going to share my screen with you. So for today's exercise, we chose to do use this coding tutorial for community mapping. Mapping and data analysis is something that we use all the time, and again, because our city is a geographic space, our hope is that we're inspiring you all to go and build tools that help you make our city better. Generally, and I'm assuming everybody can see my screen. So you have on the left side, you'll have a panel that can walk you through the exercise. This is where you can go at your own pace, and if you want to go a little bit faster, you can go a little bit faster. In the center, you have the area where you'll be able to input code. You'll be able to type in there, and then that will generate the commands. On the top right side, you'll see a little screen that right now it's purple. This is where you will see the outputs of the things that you're typing. And then there's some support files here. So for starters, I am going to try to download there's some maps of other cities, and we figured, it'd be nice to have Boston in it on one Boston day. So I am going to download the map of the city. This is, by the way, the same map that we used in our work. It is the official base map of the city of Boston in our GIS work. So you can see we care a lot about transit and seeing where our parks are. So I will now upload the folder. I'm going to try to share here. Upload the file. You click there, and then we will see the file should be uploading. All right. Boston's map is uploaded. So we'll start again, as I mentioned, we're going to be programming in, people use the term programming or coding interchangeably, but we're going to be using JavaScript, which is, if you haven't heard of it, it's a language that you use almost every time that you, if you use the internet, you're more than likely using JavaScript. You might not see it, but it is the language that most of the web pages use to make interactive content. So if you're on Google, Microsoft, if you're almost anywhere, you can see JavaScript code. So we're gonna get started. You see, it says like JavaScript is one of the fundamental languages that we use in websites, and it's also used in other applications. But so data is, let's just open it up a little bit. I'd imagine everybody has heard a little bit about data. Anyone wants to give us a quick explanation? That you don't have to, obviously there's the prompt of what is data, but I don't know if someone wants to raise their hand and volunteer a little bit. What is data for you? What kind of data do you use in your day-to-day? Anyone wants to volunteer?
Oh, Santi, I could go. This is Michael. I actually work for the city. So on sort of a weekly basis, I'll look at 311 data. And that's basically data about services that the city is delivering. So filling potholes, fixing graffiti, that sort of thing. And just checking out, how well the city is delivering those services.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so data, and we all use data, and we might not think about it, but when you're thinking about your checkbook, your expenses, all of these things are things that are data. And obviously in the management of the city, as Michael mentioned, we use data all the time. I'm gonna also go around and try to enable people to unmute themselves so that you can just feel free to jump in. But I am gonna try to figure out how to do that. Well, maybe I'll try it another day. But if you need to unmute, just raise your hand, and I think that I can do it manually fairly easily. So we'll continue. So again, there's so many interesting applications where you can use programming and data to try to solve a problem that we care about. Like, you could be thinking about helping us understand when there's a trash can that's overflowing, or if there's a place that, like, you could map your favorite public art and create interactive guides for people. So there's a number of fun applications. We'll keep going, but start thinking maybe about, and put it in the chat if you have some applications of things that you think that would be fun that you could enable, particularly applications that could leverage maps to represent information around the city. And just put it in the chat, and again, the tutorial will give you some of the fundamentals, and then you can go on, and there's a whole world. Again, our hope is that this is just an appetizer, if you will, into a whole world. And some of us, this is our careers, and this is where we spend our lives doing. But for others, it can be just a fun hobby and a way of staying engaged. So, all right, this is where it gets real. We're about to select the map. Since we've already uploaded the map of the city, we will be able to, we should be able to click here And what you saw happening was what we should see happen. Let's see. I think that we're about to see. Well, as soon as I click, some things happen on the screen. And basically, a lot of times when we're interacting with websites, this is what's happening. Behind the scenes, there's a piece of code that is getting executed. So we'll dig in a little bit deeper into what the code that we just saw is in a minute. But as you can see right now, I have a sense that we're in Boston. I mostly see blue, but so I imagine that right now we're somewhere over the harbor. So I'm going to start playing a little bit and change the scale of the map. So we can, and feel free to, again, follow the instructions, but you can go into slightly different direction. So I'm going to type the command that's on the left. Again, feel free to raise your hands or something if you have a question. But we're about to change this parameter of the map, which is the scale. And we are going to see what happens when you go to make the scale twice as big, or what happens if we do there you go. I like trying different things. I don't like always following exactly the example, but okay, great. And I'm seeing that people have some great ideas for applications. So you see that we're already starting to be able to interact with this map without clicking on a button. We're able to change the way that the map looks just through code, which is, I think, pretty cool. And you're already coding. And now we're able, because we've zoomed out a little bit, we're able to see, hopefully, the map of the city. What is that? You're seeing Beacon Hill now. Okay, we're going to the next place, and now we're going to type a couple of other commands. And now we're going to try to move a little bit around the map. So we can type the command on the left, my graphic. One, the x equals to 50. Okay. You see, we're shifting to the east, and then let's see if we make it positive. What happens? You see, we're going even a little bit beyond the edge of the map, which is pretty cool. And you see that in this case, our environment is interactively. As soon as we're making changes on the console, it's interpreting, and you see the changes instantaneously in the on the map, which is pretty cool. So we can also change the y-axis. We can go up or down in the map. I'd imagine that you can imagine that if we're using that .x parameter to tell it about where we are left to right, we'll probably use the y parameter to go up or down. So let's give it a try. Graphic 1.y equals. And then different languages tend to have different preferences. Some JavaScript, you usually put the semicolon at the end to tell it that is the end of the command. That's the end of the line. But you see, we started going down. We started going down towards the south end and towards Dorchester, which is pretty cool. Let's see if we can, how far we can go. Up to get to the edge of Chinatown, and then our map hits the edge. So I'm gonna just leave it a little bit centered around the comment. So again, feel free to play a little bit around with some of these commands. The nice thing, when almost every person who knows how to code, even really good coders, will tell you that the way that they learn how to get good at coding is by trying and messing up a little bit. So it's not too bad as long as you can get it to work. It's all good. Michael, go ahead.
I was just going to pass it on to Priscilla, who has had her hand up.
Oh yes, thank you. I'm trying to keep my eye on the.
Yeah, totally understand. Priscilla, I'm just going to ask you to unmute because you're
now it
currently
works.
Okay,
Awesome.
great.
So I guess my question is, I feel like we're not like, this is not code. This is what an end user would do. Oh, I want this map to be bigger. I want this map to be smaller. That coding is really saying, okay, when anyone says blow up or blow out, this is the parameter. Like, does that make sense, that question? I feel like.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So in some ways, what we're starting to see is how is it that we can change an object based on the code. There's when you're creating an application, like a user end application, usually what we create is code that allows, like what happens when you press a button, or what happens when you type submit, like when you send submit, or when you type into a box. That's kind of what we're doing right now, is showing how is it that the code is changing some element. I think that what you're thinking about is more on the back end. So how is it that we move, let's say that we wanted to extract all of the 3-on-1 submissions that we've received, but you actually use very similar code. You use, like there's some, we'll get there. I think that we'll get to see some of it later, but it's the same fundamentals and a lot of times even the same languages.
So you're just sort of demonstrating how code, the essence of what code is.
Yeah. Yes, right. And I think the objective of the tutorial today is get us to the point that we've built like a little application that uses this code to be able to map.
Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah. That's a great question. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Priscilla, for your question. And again, as it picks up a little bit, we don't know exactly where everybody is starting from. So some things might seem kind of basic and some things might seem a little bit daunting to others, and that's okay. I find it helpful, and one of the things that I've learned is that it is helpful even for very experienced programmers to go back to the fundamentals to make sure that you're, sometimes we even, because for whatever reason we haven't interacted with like a particular type of object or whatnot, it is helpful for people to refresh and go back to the basics. This particular concept that we're about to learn is applied almost everywhere. So in programming, we think about objects. So we think that there's something that has a number of different attributes. In this case, we've been treating that graphic one as an object, and we've been changing different attributes, different values of these attributes. But we're about to get deeper on that. So we're about to create an empty object. We're going to assign, when we type var, that is JavaScript. It's a JavaScript construct to assign a variable. So we're going to say that there's a new, and you can see that the editor is changing a little bit the colors to tell us that some things are like specifically the JavaScript part, and then what are things that we're adding. So we're deciding that we're going to call this thing called Apple, and we are going to create an empty object. There's nothing at this point. Apple, and we could have called it whatever we wanted, but could be student if we're thinking about student records. It could be anything, right? So now we're going to add some parameters we're going to create this values and keys. So key being the thing that allows us to find what value, and the value being the actual content of the value. So in the interest of following the exercise, we're gonna make a value, and I think that what they're trying to show is that some of these values could be something like a picture or something else that is, or so in this case, we're just saying that the icon key is associated with the value of the apple. And I think at this point, nothing should be happening. You shouldn't be seeing anything differently, but we're just giving some so we're just starting to build out our objects. So okay, we have the first part, the first key, which is the icon. Now we're gonna give it an X and a Y. I think that at this point, it won't even show in the map just yet. We'll get it to show there later. But so I am adding these other values. Let's see, I think that, yeah, nothing should be quite happening yet. Okay, so we are about to add a key for a description. So yeah, if they're telling us that the key should be called description, I think that we should call it this description. And then I'm going to use the parentheses that tells us that the value that what I'm putting is what we call a string, which is a language value. So as you can see, we have, I have to put a comma here. Those 250 values, all of the numbers that we've had look green, and that's because those are integers, they're numbers, and the computer interprets them as numbers. But when I use the quotation marks, it's going to put it as a string. So I'm gonna say this is my apple. Okay. And as you can see, it is writing it in blue. And that lets us know that that entire, even the spaces, all the words, all of that is getting passed on to the computer as a string. Okay, so now we are going to start interacting with functions. And I think that this is where we start seeing some interesting things out in the application. So we are going to create this new variable called my text. And I don't know if you could see, but there's a little hello that was written in all white at the top of the map, which is exciting. And if you see, now it's telling me to, I'm gonna change the color of my text. And since I'm going back to that my text object and changing the value for that color key equals black. You see, and I just changed to black, which is pretty neat and makes it a little bit easier for us to read. So I think that what the tutorial is telling us now is when we pass that string hello to this new concept that we have a function called text, we're passing a parameter. We're telling text is, if you think like a verb, and we're giving it a subject, we're giving it something that the verb can now act on. So when we said hello to text, it created a text called that with the same value that we just passed it. And now we assign it this variable called my text so that we could go back and reference it. Which is exciting. So now we are going to move our text box and we are going to go to var my text one text. So we've created another text box, but now it's a little bit offset. It's actually offset 50. In this case, I think that they're pixels is the unit. So we added 2 more arguments to text. So text is smart enough that when we pass other things with it, it knows that the other 2 parameters, that's what like the different components of the function is, that it should move it a little bit and offset it. Okay, so now it says that it wants us to change the name to something a little bit more memorable. So I'm gonna go to bar, Apple icon, text. So just changing the name of the variable, and we now can change the color of the code to black. And it changed it, which is great. And it's just giving us some pointers around restrictions in JavaScript. These are the kinds of things that change when we talk about JavaScript or Python or Java, some other programming languages. Each one has like slightly different rules. And these are some of the rules that exist in JavaScript. Some of them are shared across the board, but we can't start the name of a variable with a number. We can't have spaces, and we can't have any punctuation mark besides an underscore. Priscilla, go ahead. You wanna unmute yourself?
You're playing around with all the hello, but I'm not understanding why you created the apple and the icon and we don't see that on the
Yeah, we haven't.
demonstration.
Yeah, we were just building. Again, I'm going off of the tutorial. I think in this case, they were just, when we created the variable, it wasn't associated with anything. So it was just like, it's getting stored in the memory, but it is not tied with the map. That's why when we use the function text, it actually went and displayed it.
Okay.
I think that we'll
We'll
get there.
discover why we did it. Okay.
Yeah, if you will, that data is kind of right now not tied with the map. It just exists. It exists underneath the underneath the blanket, if you will. But I think that we'll get there. I think that this is what we're okay. So now, actually, I'm gonna clean up this a little bit more. I think that this will answer your questions, Priscilla. So I'm gonna call this Apple icon, and this is text. And now we're going to, instead of just passing a string, we're going to actually reference our Apple object to try to get the object. So we're gonna call apple.icon. And remember, we're passing these parameters, which are going to be interpreted as, you see, the apple's now appearing on the map. And what we're doing is bringing that data that existed in our Apple object and then creating a representation using the function of the interface, which is pretty cool. And then it wants us to do Apple color equals. Supposed to do that. yeah, I think it's not going to change anything, because what it would be trying to do is change the text if it had any color, but because it's an icon, it's not something that it knows how to change the color. Okay, so now Priscilla asked a great question. Says, you asked, so what happened? We also put other data in there. We had put the X and the Y, but that's not getting represented in the map. So what we're going to do now is actually go back and reference the data that was in the Apple object, those values, to try to make them be the location that is displayed. So here we're going to now put Apple X and Apple.Y, and then you can see that our Apple moved across the map, and it's gathering the data that we had underneath in the Apple object. So if we change this to 50, it moves regardless of, we're not interacting now directly with that variable with the Apple icon. We're interacting with the underlying data, which is pretty exciting. So you see that how an application, how powerful this stuff is. I get excited. Maybe it's not that exciting.
I thought it was pretty cool, Santi. One quick thing, do you want to play around with the console a little bit at the bottom? Is that worth going through?
Yeah.
It's kind of magical when you do a log statement and see the output.
Yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's see if I can get to the I'm getting in there. There you go.
There you go.
So what is nice is, do you want to explain a little bit what the console does, and maybe even we can go and show, I have the screen, but I can show later how you can get to a JavaScript console from almost any browser.
Right. Yeah. The console is really useful, when you're programming. Sometimes there's an error, you need to, figure out what a function does or what's in a particular object. So for example, here, when Santi defined Apple _ icon, I mean, this is kind of like magical stuff when you start programming. Santi put in, Apple.icon, which was the actual icon, and then Apple.x, Apple.y to, visualize that on the map. But one thing you could do on the console, and Santi, maybe you want to type this out, what if you wanted to know, oh, what did you actually define Apple.x as? So log.apple.x, maybe. Yeah, so, yep. So you've got 50 there, and then maybe you do log of apple.icon. Yep. So it's pretty cool. It just kind of, in this case, it's helping you kind of scope out, oh, what did I actually define in this particular object?
Yeah, and as Michael pointed out, a lot of times once you start developing bigger and more complex things, you might run into errors. You might say something, it says we can't, the JavaScript engine will tell you, I can't do this. And usually you use the log to try to figure out, because most of the times it's just, this is where programming mostly about people who are very rigorous and very organized and to be very good programmers, because a lot of times the error is that you're passing something that wasn't in the right format to the other thing, or and you just needed to see what format something was in the first place. So being able to see, like if we, instead of passing the 50 as a number, if we had passed it as a string,
right,
it looks like 50, but the computer is going to interpret it in a different way. So that's not going to work. But yeah.
Oh, Santi, what if we did what if we went back to defining X as the 50 as a string?
Yeah.
Just to kind of show it mess up a little bit. Yeah, and then presumably if you replay, like this should throw an error, right? Like it wouldn't know.
I think underneath the scene is not because it is
Oh,
probably
I see.
like it cached, but it shouldn't be able to show us our apple, because right now we gave it a position in the map that actually doesn't exist. It's like we're now writing a poem and it was expecting a number from a calculator.
Right, right, okay.
It's not going to be compatible, but yeah, that's the kind of error that happens all the time when you get a little bit deeper into programming. But so hopefully you can see how powerful this stuff is. So you have objects that are ways for us to organize different data, and we can organize and add other types of information to these objects. We can use functions to interact with the objects to change attributes and values of the objects. And sometimes we can use some of these functions to create and interact with other parts. It's pretty awesome. Okay. I think that we've done all of these things. All right. So now on to the next great adventure of adding a rectangle. And we're going to use another function, which is this rect function. And then it's telling us that we're going to have 4 parameters. We're going to have the x and the y probably of the, well, we'll have to see. I would assume that it is the lowest left corner of the rectangle. That's the x and the y, but I don't really know yet. I'm going to do, or maybe it is the top. Let's do this, 200. And then I am going to give it a width and a height. So I'm gonna make it 200 by 100. And then let's see what happened here. With that, we have a rectangle, and you can see the value of the variables, because right now, if I want to change the color of the rectangle, I actually have no way of calling it out. I can't, remember when we went back and we changed the color of the graphic of the text. We can't do that without a variable name, but I'm assuming that this thing is going to add a rectangle. That's good. Okay, I will do this. It says that I need to do movie.width. Actually, we'll use Michael's trick to go and figure out what if movie.width exists. Because
Love it.
Yeah, we see there is an object that was given to us for free when we started, but I didn't even know about this. So I was about to be confused and frustrated, but there is a width. It is 640. And maybe what we should do then is also change the x of this to be 0, so that we can get back to the leftmost corner. And we are going to change the height to be 60. Okay. Okay, so now it's saying we need to change the color of the rectangle to be green. So in order to be able to call on the rectangle, I'm gonna have to change this statement and say it's a variable, and I'm gonna call it my rectangle. on this point, I will disagree with what the tutorial is doing. Usually it's better to name your variables things that you can understand what it is, even if it's a little bit longer. It won't impact the performance. Like older versions of computer software, really, you had to be mindful of having shorter variable names, but these days you can have longer variable names. I would, because sometimes you're not sure what my rec is afterwards. Michael, go ahead.
Oh, I was wondering, so in the chat, Christina has a question that maybe we could help debug. So they're finding that movie.width isn't doing much, and it seemed like you had gotten it for free, like it's kind of just already defined. So maybe we could help figure this out. Does it just come, is it just like defined throughout the system?
It should be. Do you wanna maybe give it Christina, if you want to type this argument of log parentheses movie dot width, close the parentheses and then the semicolon, and then look at the console to see if something's showing up. If not, it might be a good idea to just kind of refresh the page. But one thing that coding is very sensitive to spelling, so you want to make sure, like, if I have spent hours looking for a semicolon, even in 5 lines of code, coding's a very humbling experience. So might be worth just double checking that you have the right spelling, and maybe give it a shot and see if you can find if movie.width exists in your environment. But it should. Okay, so now I see. Pretty cool. It worked. Christina, were you able to get it to work? Oh, great. There you go. And you start seeing this, especially in a place like our department in innovation and technology, you start seeing that a lot of times one person will be coding, but they're coding in an environment that someone else built on top of a server that someone else built. And these things have a big impact. So this is why in our work, we're very diligent about telling our teams to document things well, to be very clear, because a lot of times you might be having an impact on someone else and you don't even know it in the way that we have to do our job. But this is exciting. We were able to change the color of the triangle to green. Okay, well, we are going to change the variable. Let's see what it's trying to say. Oh, okay. It wants us to give a title to our app just to show. So we're gonna call, remember, we create a variable with the word bar, which is something specific to JavaScript. Title, just title without the quotes, because that is the name of the variable that we want to give of the object. And we are going to create this text, and we could say 1 Boston day. And then it should show up. Yep, it shows up here. Well, in the spirit of the Fenway Park, let's make it green like the Green Monster. We've made it green. It's all green themed today, like Fenway Park. So I'm gonna go and say title.text, title.color, right? And I'm going to make it green. Awesome. You see, it's so cool. This is, I don't know, this is exciting. Now it wants us to change the color and the size of the title. The good thing is that we already changed the color. Let's try to see if we can change the size. I am not entirely sure how the text fields are getting, like how the height and the width, but let's assume for the time that there's a parameter called height, and let's assume that this is, maybe this is too big. Maybe I'm not. Okay, I'm going to follow Michael's advice. I'm going to use the log because I'll be able to see if I call out title, I will actually be able to see. Oh yeah, you see, this is what the console's so beautiful because I can see the entirety of the object below. I can see what, because we didn't build text. Text was given to us, and now we need to change the size of the font, which is not height. It's actually probably going to be font size, and it was originally 55, and I'm trying to change it to 10. Okay. It's okay. Apparently we cheated, and apparently you have to use just this size, but the good thing is, like here, when we go to the console, you can see that we're actually interacting with the object and changing the font size, which is pretty cool. Code line, I like green. Also like green. Okay, so now we're going to start binding real data to our object. All right, team. We got to quiz time. If we want to create an object that is empty, which of the three are we going to use? Put it in the chat. Are we going to use the first option with the brackets? Are we going to use the quotes? Or are we going to use the bracket? Yeah, those are called brackets. What is the first? I don't know. My typography, but option 1, option 2, or option 3. What do you think? Amazing. I think that you're all right, but let's verify. Aha. Yes, correct. It is the brackets that instantiate objects. Remember, the quotes create actually a string, and then we haven't covered that, but the square brackets, what they do is they create an array, which is a list. But if you love coding, hopefully you find this fun and you want to keep learning more, and then you can learn about arrays, and you can teach the next one of these. You can go and host an hour of code and teach some of your friends how to code. Okay, so we want to assign a value to a key called color. Which of the three options do you think? Do we use an equal sign? Do we use the colon? Or do we use, I don't even know what the third one, or do we use both an equal sign and we don't use quotations? What do you think? Option 1, 2, or 3? Number 1. And again, don't feel intimidated. Feel free to share your answers, and we can talk a little bit about what is going on. So hopefully I'm not mispronouncing your name, but Yakisha and one says you're both right. It is, I think it is this one, and it is number 2, and this gets a little bit tricky because, but this is the right answer, because we use the equal sign to do assignment for variables. But when we are inside of an object, we assign keys, we pair objects and values using the colon. And remember that if we want to have a number of different, we could see a little bit of the answers here in the console. If we want to add other attributes, we use the comma to make a list. And remember that we have to use the quotes if we're going to be using a string. So, good job. Ooh la la. All right. We are going to add some interactions. So now, when mouse clicked, apparently I didn't even know this. Apparently, but so we're now going to start creating interactivity. So we're going to have a function that is going to get executed. And just let's look at the function for just a quick second. I know that we're getting close to time, but canvas is the object, the square where we have our map. And when mouse clicked is a function. It's yeah. And we have right now an empty function. It doesn't have a name and it doesn't have any arguments, but we're about to describe what's going to happen when we click the mouse. So this is super exciting. We are, well, I'm actually going to, that when you see / and then information, that's what we call the comment. So it's code that is not getting executed, but it is really helpful to know, especially if you wanted to leave a note for yourself later or for another developer. But even sometimes it's really helpful to leave like what you were thinking or how you thought about approaching a problem, because you can go back later and change it and you understand what's going on. So 2 professional tips of advice: make variables that make sense to you when you read them, and then document with using the comments. Very helpful if you choose it either as a profession or as a hobby. It saves a lot of time. All right, enough of that. I am going to go and follow these instructions and say click. All right. I think, let's see, start working. Message. Click. Let's see what's that. Has anyone been able to get it to work? Not yet. Oh yeah. I'm gonna try something here. Right. Okay. So I just wanted to check first that I was able to get to, that I was getting the right parameters. So that seems to be fine. And for some reason, oh, maybe it's because I haven't finished following the instructions. So I was getting a little bit too eager. Let's keep reading. So, okay. Oh, yeah, we need to, I was using this generic object called canvas, which is not that object. So now we need to tie it directly with to the text function that I've already created. Oh, yeah, it could be Apple icon. Let's see.
Santi, are we covering up the icon with the rectangle?
Maybe we are.
That might be the thing.
Get rid of this. Actually,
Yeah. So one quick thing that Santi just did is he commented out. Was that something we went through before?
not quite explicitly. So not quite explicitly. So
Okay.
Not quite. So we talked a little bit about commenting, which was a way in which we could get code not to get executed. So as Michael was referencing, instead of deleting the entirety of the code that created the yeah, it's all working now. Instead of deleting the entirety of the code that created the rectangle that was covering our apple, I just when I put 2 slashes in front of that code, it made it not execute. So I could see, so it basically made it like silly, like it just didn't do anything. So now it's amazing because when I click on the apple, it's changing the title. And before, when I was clicking, that's why I was getting frustrated. If I clicked anywhere, it wasn't doing anything. But when I click the apple now, it actually is registering. So it's awesome. Pretty cool. Because we don't have a way of clicking back. We only do it when you click. This is why we're having to use the reversal to get it back to, say, the original thing. But this is great. All right, let's proceed. Using data in the click. So now we're going to say when you are going to change the content of title message in mouse clicked to tell us something about the message. So now we are going to give it the description. So here I am going to go to apple.description using the 4th piece of data that we had in our original object that Priscilla had asked us before about what. So I click on it and now it says, this is my apple. It's getting that string and then passing it through the function when we click. Which is pretty cool. Here's the fun thing to do, change the emoji that you're using for the icon. Let's see if there's other emojis. Yeah, we can skip that piece. So we can, I'm gonna uncomment my rectangle and make it maybe a little bit smaller because it is a little bit too big. I'll make it 50. And I'm going to start it. There you go. So now it's saying that we should do another function to change things whenever we click on the rectangle. So I'm going to go and say, yeah, I'm gonna go to my rectangle. When mouse clicked, And now the codes. Title dot message. Let's see if this works. Green monster. To get a good Boston feeling to it. And then gonna close it. And hopefully this works. Let's go up and see. There you go. When we click on the green rectangle, we get a green monster sign. So you can start seeing that you can have multiple elements that are interacting with the same data point, which is pretty powerful. I change description to display a different color. So let's just go here and we're going to just make title dot message equals, let's make it red when it has the apple, and then let's make it green when it has when we click on the green monster. So now this is my apple, green monster. This is my apple, but why is the color not? Oh, because you see, I was passing the wrong, changing the wrong attribute. I was changing message when I should be changing color. So now hopefully this works. So this is the green monster. This is my apple. Why is this not working? Title dot color. I'm gonna give something a try. Maybe it doesn't understand that. Wait a second. This is my apple. Why? Oh. Why is this not working? Well, we'll give it one more second, but if nothing else, we'll let you guys explore and figure out what is going on here. Missing something. Line 28, missing something. Oh, out of the column. It's black. Oh yeah, it's white. Okay. All right. Let's see if it changes. Yeah, there you go. It was working. It just got a little stuck with, because we've just been editing. Usually you would have code that's a little bit cleaner, more separated. It's kind of hard to tell where we were. But this is great. So when we click on the green monster, it says green monster. And when we click on the red apple, it shows this is my apple. So you can, again, feel free to keep playing with these things. You can change the size of the icons and other things. And I think that we have successfully reached the end of the hour of code. So we haven't solved world hunger or fixed every problem that we have, but hopefully this gives you just like a very kind of initial approximation to being able to do this. You can see how powerful this is. In some sense, if you wanted, you could actually start putting together icons for your favorite places within Boston Common, and you could make it that when you click on the map, you would be able to see what the name, where the frog pond is, where the gazebo is, and you with the skills that you've learned today, you should be able to do that. Remember, you can zoom out a little bit and center the Boston Common. You can create different objects by using the text field, and once you do that, you can publish your application, and you can have other people go and see the fun things that you have done. Priscilla, you have your hand raised. You're muted right now.
Now, this sort of goes back to my, I guess, original question. When you've shown us all this, a lot of times I'm thinking to myself, oh, I can do that with the basic word processing program as an end user or a spreadsheet. And so I'm trying to, in the end, like our word processing program is JavaScript behind. It's so much more complicated, but JavaScript is creating all of the things that as end users, we have the opportunity to then play with.
Yeah, so I would say that this is the beginning of a journey. At the early stages, it does seem like it's quite similar, but what you can see, for instance, is you could imagine that if you had a list of your favorite, like you have a list of data. Imagine that you had 2,000, I'm gonna make up a number, but right, like imagine that you have 2,000 benches and you had the location of all the benches and you wanted to map them out. So you could do that by hand, but with code, what we've shown is that you could interpret all of those as pieces of data that then you can have the computer go and map for you, because you can be passing the same way that we passed here the location as an attribute.
Yeah.
The function, you could be doing that for each element. It's just we didn't in 1 hour we can't quite learn all of it, but like what you would probably want to start looking at is arrays and iterators to be able to do that. So remember that we talk about like the square brackets where you can have a list of things and then you can go through each of those to do something.
So then very relevant, the kids who were misaligned with the exam schools, the grade, in fact, the mayor said there was a programming, there was something in a program. Is that program written, the programmers working with the schools department, depending which kids are eligible, that's happening in JavaScript, and that just needed to be corrected somewhere in JavaScript. They needed to bring grades in. And
I'm not entirely familiar with that specific example, but yes, that is, like we use JavaScript to do a lot of the work in boston.gov when you're submitting something to make sure that things are going to the right person. So again, JavaScript tends to be used overly, like mostly for interactive things. So this is why we wanted to use it today for the map. What is nice is like, again, once you imagine if you've created this app and you wanted not only the person that had the one app, but anytime that anyone accesses the app would be able to do the same kind of things. That's also why you use JavaScript, right? Like if you think about your Word document, you usually think, oh, I have one Word document. But if you wanted like 1,000 people, like a video game, 1,000 people that have the same video game could be interactive. But yeah, it's just this is the beginning, and when you start playing a little bit more with it, you see that there's so much power behind this, but it all goes back to the fundamentals. And sometimes the basic mistakes, like even things that are very consequential, go back to very silly mistakes, like the one that we did, like putting the wrong name of the wrong attribute, the wrong key. And then
And then
something,
coders look through the coding and you have to just keep peeling the layers of where that problem actually is coming from.
exactly. I think that we're gonna follow up with you guys and send you in via email some other resources if you want to learn more. But one that is amazing, if there's this website called GitHub, where there's a repository of a lot of code, and you would be amazed the kinds of things that where the code is open there, and you can see there's billions of lines of code that people are generating every day. And yeah, to your point, teams like ours spend a lot of time working on building the code, but also a lot of time reading and deciphering how is it that what could break, or how could we write something to be a little bit more efficient.
And you can't know that there's a problem until someone has created conditions that are very random that create the problem.
There is. So one of the things that we're starting to do in our department is there's ways in which you can use code to simulate those conditions. So you can know that something's going to break before it breaks. So we're actually starting to build that automation in our payroll systems, in a lot of tools. Because you can think, to your point, it's so important. You know, some things are so important that are being driven by code. We shouldn't just wait until someone figures out that it's not working correctly.
Right, because you can, in your case, the rectangle didn't quite work, but in a bigger case, and most immediately was the kids who got wrong information that they were eligible or not eligible to be allowed to pursue certain schools.
Indeed.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you all for spending this time. It's been awesome. And if nothing else, it's wonderful meeting you all and spending this time together. Let us know if you think that it'd be interesting. We could try to figure out if there's other opportunities of doing similar events. And if nothing else, have fun. There's other tutorials and other things here in VidCode, and we can share some other resources to help you in your journey. And again, whether you do this the one time or you want to keep trying it because it's a fun hobby or a new profession, welcome. You're part of the countless people that are intrigued and confused, and we love doing this stuff. So you're now programmers. You have a great rest of your day.